Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 1993 Dodge Grand Caravan LE. Up front is a 3.3 liter V6, and down below is a 4-speed automatic transmission. Now, I am super excited to be driving this Caravan here today because it is a very, very well kept, very clean example that is for sale from North Naperville Autos. But the second reason is that this has the 3.3 liter V6, of which I've driven Caravans in the past with the 4-cylinder or the 3-liter Mitsubishi engine, but now we get to try out the 3.3, and I'm excited to compare them for you today. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle, you can head on over to my website, zackpradel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form, takes under a minute to fill out. I come out to you, you guys know the drill. But also a huge thank you to North Naperville Autos for letting me take out their Dodge Caravan. If you'd like to browse their inventory, you can find that in the description below, but we'll talk more about them towards the end of the video. But let's get back to that 3.3 liter V6. Well, like I said, this is a Chrysler engine, and so this was Chrysler starting to sort of get away from using Mitsubishi's engines. Now, they still use Mitsubishi engines all the way up through the 90s, even into the early 2000s. It makes 150 horsepower here in 1993, but the next model year for 1994, they actually upped it to 162 horsepower. So a 12 horsepower gain by just adding one model year for the 3.3. Now, something interesting about the 3.3 liter, although like I said, it is Chrysler's design instead of Mitsubishi, the Mitsubishi was actually an overhead cam engine, where this actually goes back to push rods. It also made a similar power number to the 3 liter, and honestly, reliability is up in the air between the two. These 3.3s sometimes had lifter issues. Along with the ABS will tend to go out on these. There's an actual nationwide recall on the ABS, but that doesn't have to do with the engine, just thought I'd mention it. So I don't really see much of a benefit, and it's kind of interesting that Chrysler offered two different V6s at the time that were so similar. The 3.3 is a holdover from the first generation of Caravan as well, so it wasn't a brand new engine for this generation. Like I said, paired to it is an automatic transmission. Now, you could find these in manual with the 4 cylinders. Very, very rare, and I actually drove one here on the channel last year, so you could check out that video if you want. That was a manual transmission to Caravan. Essentially as a Plymouth Voyager, but you get the drill. The automatic is fine. They're not very strong. Any Chrysler product from really 1982, 1984, we'll say, up through the 1990s did not have good transmissions. That meant the Ram trucks had bad transmissions. The little Dodge Spirits and Dodge Shadows had bad transmissions. Any automatic from Chrysler from the 80s and 90s, I would not trust as far as I could throw it. And I have very feeble arms. And so, not great, but it's functioning here today, and I can't complain. Last but not least about the Dodge Caravan, it is front-wheel drive, as it says for some reason just below the radio. How does it feel to drive the Dodge Caravan? Well, it drives like a minivan, often a statement used when a sports car is terrible or something like that, but this drives like a minivan. You do have a very flat loading floor, and so you have a very flat driving experience as well. Visibility is really good. That is one of the big benefits of buying an 80s or 90s car, is the outward visibility was always very wonderful. Steering is a little light, throttle isn't very responsive, but it's a minivan. It's literally a minivan, so I don't really knock it too hard for those attributes. With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, up in front of me is an information center, and that's actually where our warning lights will show up. But down below, we get a full gauge cluster. Off to the left is our tachometer. Part of the LE package was getting a tachometer. Speedometer, oil pressure, battery voltage, fuel and coolant temperature. John from Motor Week would be very happy. To the left of the gauge cluster, we do have our headlight and hazard switches, as well as our dimmer, and off to the right, we have our rear wipers attached to the cluster. Very much an 80s thing, but cool to see. We also have climate vents down on the gauge cluster bezel, sort of pointed at your kneecaps. Very interesting placement there. On the steering wheel, we do have horn buttons as well as our speed control, cruise control. I love the verbiage from the 1990s. Dodge used speed control. And overall, the steering wheel is fine. Off to the left, we get another climate control vent. And moving on to the door, we have our lock and unlock, power mirrors, and power windows. all very retro. Up over my right shoulder, we have a ton of storage options, as well as venting, some lights. We can look at some metrics and whatnot. Very, very cool overhead console, and definitely competes very handsomely with the Oldsmobile Silhouette that had a similar setup. Moving into the center, we have 2 more climate control vents, so we've already counted 5 in the last minute or so, and our Dodge radio. Down below that, as I mentioned earlier, we have a trunk release and rear defrost, but then a panel that just says front wheel drive. They were very, very proud of that in the time. A lot of vehicles on the market were still rear wheel drive, and so they wanted to show off that this was front wheel drive because that gets better traction and better fuel economy, so they say. Up on the dash, I do like we get this really nice nameplate that says Dodge Caravan. Absolutely love that look. Down below that, we have our climate controls and the 12-volt outlet. Tons of cubby space. Pull-out ashtray. Underneath the ashtray, you can actually pull it out further, and you do get cup holders. So we will do a big friggin' bottle test here in the 93 Caravan. It fails. However, I do have to tip my cap because it has cup holders at all, which weren't always standard here in 1993. Pop open cubby. Then we do get an additional center console. This is an aftermarket center console. However, it actually is pretty nice because this one does pass, but I can't give the Grand Caravan a pass overall. But then we got to talk about the seats. The seats are very cushy. They're very bouncy, and I love them. 1990s cars knew what they were doing when it came to seat comfort. That's something that automakers have gotten away from over the last 30 years. And so I am very happy to be soaking up the lovely, lovely seats here in the 93 Caravan. However, it's just my luck that we have 2 more rows of seating to check out. So let's go do some backseat reviews. All right, so as I work my way around the vehicle, you can't see me yet, maybe you can start seeing me now. As any 90s kid will tell you, there's only one door on these Caravans, and it's on the passenger side. This was for 2 reasons. A, structural rigidity. In a crash test, it's a lot easier when you can reinforce one side and not have a door. But the second reason is for child safety. You're not going to have a kid fling a door open and run out into traffic. It's very interesting driving cars in this era, late 80s and early 90s, because I apologize if this sounds crass, but in the late 80s and early 90s, adults started to realize that they kind of have to protect kids a little bit. With the milk carton kids and whatnot, I feel like there was just this general, we should really keep track of these things. We keep losing these guys like all over the place. And so you'll see in here, it says child protection lock, door only on one side so kids don't run into traffic. Anyone who grew up in the 60s, 70s, latchkey kids know that parents kind of didn't really give a rip. That started to change in the 90s. People actually started looking at what was going into the food that they were giving their kids. Child locks, things like that. The lockouts for the shifters where you have to push the button so a kid can't just grab the column shift, throw it down into drive like Ricky Bobby and go fast. Kind of a cool thing to check out. I just want to talk about that. Let's talk about the back seat. We do have 2 cup holders and a giant storage cubby off to the left, as well as an ashtray. So the kids won't run out into traffic, but they can have a Marlboro Light after a long day of pre-K. Good to know. I do get a center walkway here. These are 2 captain's chairs. Headroom is good. The headliner is sagging a little bit, but headroom is good. Knee room is great. I'm 5'11". I'm not a small guy, and I fit back here very, very handsomely. However, let's hop into the very back row, also known as the 3rd row, also known as the back. There's no other nickname. Let's just go back there. Once we are in the very 3rd row, this is arguably even more spacious than the 2nd row. Knees are not hitting the seat in front of me. Head is not hitting the ceiling. SUVs today are very popular. They're good cars. And actually this morning I drove a 2024 Kia Sorento. Had a really good back seat as well. Nothing that is put on the market today, besides the Pacifica and Odyssey and Sienna, can match a minivan. Minivans will always, always, always be in a class of their own, which is wonderful. I will happily ride back here for 14 hours to Denver, Colorado from Chicago. I would do that in a heartbeat. I'm comfortable. I have space. I can breathe. I can think. That's not a common occurrence in today's modern market. And so, growing up back here, I might as well be in my own world. That is so cool. These back seats are they're the best. They are the best. And I love to see that. let's hop out. We will take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks, and then we'll get back to talking about this wonderful minivan. I apologize if it's a little noisy. We are getting our 17-year cicadas right now here in Illinois. So they have been obnoxious. But something interesting about the Dodge Grand Caravan LE is the fact that there is no handle. To get in the back, you have to put the key in, and then you can lift it up like that. There is no handle under there. Kind of interesting. Once we are back here, even though I have very adequate space there and there, we still have more trunk space as well. I mean, that's impressive. That is really, truly impressive. Do I get any amenities back here? No, I don't get anything special, cool, or crazy. Floor mat, that's really it. But here's the back of the Dodge Grand Caravan from 1993, in case you were curious. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I've always liked the look of the second gen Caravan. It's a little bit more rounded off than the first gen. It was trying to compete with the other domestic minivans of the time, and so everything was getting a little bit more rounder as the 90s went on, so this did too. However, I love the aftermarket additions to this Caravan. Like the wind deflector up at the front, so 90s, and the side steps that say Caravan. Absolutely love that. I feel like this was hand-plucked out of a Kmart parking lot from 1993, and I love that. However, with all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving a 1993 Dodge Caravan LE? Well, as I mentioned, the LE is the top trim, and it got things like the tachometer and all the fixins that one might want. However, it's really cool to be stepping into this car, into this time capsule, and realizing what this vehicle is like. I'm sure plenty of you are going to comment that this is what your parents had when you were a kid. Probably a lot of soccer practices in this van. Probably a lot of band recitals, going to school. I'm sure many of you, this was your first car, which was a hand-me-down from your parents, and you'd hang out in it. All your friends would pack in here, and you'd go to Dairy Queen or go to the arcade or whatever was happening in the early 90s, or honestly, early 2000s. This is just as much a mid-2000s car as it is a 90s car, because that's when they probably got the most use, was hand-me-down vehicles. Besides the point, it's really nice to be driving such a well-kept example of one. And I have to say the 3.3 liter is really nice. It is a pretty torquey engine, and I'm very happy about that. However, the transmission is not very happy to be shifting with that torquey engine, so it's kind of a win-lose, settle for something type deal. It's fine. This car symbolizes growing up in America. I think almost any 90s kid is going to have a memory of this vehicle. And so here I am today offering some high definition footage of your childhood. So enjoy, and remember the better days. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to North Naperville Autos for letting me take out their Dodge Caravan. This vehicle is absolutely wonderful. They are wonderful. They always have cool, interesting, and unique vehicles on their lot. This just happens to be one of them today, but if you guys are fans of the channel, you'll see a ton of cool stuff. Their information is up on the screen as well as linked in the description below. I'd highly recommend checking them out if you're in the Chicagoland area, or they do ship to the lower 48 states, and they offer mobile detailing. So whatever you need, North Naperville Autos will do. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.